We will make Election Day a holiday in the United States of America, so there's no complaints about it. Cancel Juneteenth or one of the other useless ones we made up. Okay?
Useless holidays. Do you think Juneteenth is a useless holiday?
I basically do. Yeah.
Of the country. I don't think we should try to politicize this through partisan goggles either, Chuck, especially in the wake of a tragedy like this one. The fact is there are
ignore the manifesto
dying on the south side of Chicago.
Do you ignore?
We still have
Let me take affirmative action here a minute. The reason we implemented it, it was basically a reparation for Jim Crow, because African Americans were denied opportunities that other Americans that they should have had over the last 100 years, and they were denied it. And the point of affirmative. Do you think now you can make the case that somehow everything is level for African Americans?
I'm not making the case that everything's level. I'm making the case that Lyndon Johnson's Great Society has been a disaster for all Americans, especially Black Americans. Okay, 70+% of Black Americans before the Great Society, including affirmative action, were born into two-parent households. Now it's less than 30% in the other direction. Is affirmative action a form of anti-white and anti-Asian racism, and is it anti-meritocratic? Yes, it is, but that's not the only problem. It is actually a form of psychological slavery that has held Black Americans back.
And mental health is one aspect of these shootings, and this was very much apparently racially motivated. The sheriff there said point blank that this shooter had 3 manifestos and said specifically that he went to this dollar store with the intent of killing Black people.
I think that is heinous and deserves to be called out for what it is. The reality is we've created such a racialized culture in this country in the last several years that right as the last few burning embers of racism were burning out, we have a culture in this country largely created by media and establishment and universities and politicians that throw kerosene on that racism. And I can think of no better way to fuel racism in this country than to take something away from other people on the basis of their skin color. I've been saying that for years.
I believe that there are a lot of people of color in this country who don't think it was just lasting embers of racism, but that a lot more work had to be done, particularly given the history of the systemic racism in this country with slavery and beyond. I want to ask you about a comment that you made about white supremacy in Iowa on Friday.
I've never once encountered that yet. I'm sure the boogeyman white supremacist exists somewhere in America. I've just never met him. Never seen one. Never met one in my life, right? Maybe I'll meet a unicorn sooner. And maybe those exist too.
What do you think goes through the minds of the families of the 3 victims in yesterday's shooting when they hear you say that white supremacy is basically a fantasy?
Politics. But I was responding to a question where someone asked me, what racism have I experienced in recent years? And the reality is,
do you
this is
acknowledge,
part
though,
of a
that
dogma
white
in this
supremacy
country.
does still exist in the United States?
I acknowledge that all forms of racial animus exist in the United States, including fringe branches. I mean, that's clearly what was at the head of this mentally deranged individual responsible for this shooting, yes. But I think there are many forms of mental derangement that cause us to see one another on the basis of our skin color. And those who say the remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination, I say no. The right remedy is actually abandoning all discrimination and moving forward with colorblind meritocracy in the United States of America.
Traditions, like I said, religion is, I call these things cults. I won't dignify them as religions because religions have withstood the test of time. And so I think that if we made a national commemorative holiday for everything that's important that happened in our history, we'd have no working days left. But I think the spirit of Juneteenth, we already channel into other holidays, like Martin Luther King Day, like President's Day. I think we can commemorate the spirit of that holiday separately. And I think, let's be honest, the reason for making that a holiday was under political duress. It's a political hostage situation on the back of the death of George Floyd. And I think that should not be how we create holidays. We should not create holidays with a cultural gun to our head. And that's what happened with Juneteenth.
You took issue with comments from Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. She reportedly said, quote, "We don't need any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice." About that, you said, "These are the words of the modern grand wizards of the modern KKK." You know, I'm sure, the KKK was responsible for more than a century's worth of horrific lynchings, rapes, murders of black people. How in any way are the views you're talking about comparable to the views and atrocities committed by the KKK?
What I said is the Grand Wizards of the KKK would be proud of what they would hear her say, because there's nothing more racist than saying that your skin color predicts something about the content of your viewpoints
You didn't just say they would be proud. You said these are the words of the modern Grand Wizards of the modern KKK.
It is the same spirit. You're right about that, Dana. I think it is the same spirit to say that I can look at you and based on just your skin color, that I know something about the content of your character.
That is a debate that is based on nonviolent discussion. That you just said you're using rhetoric, which she said she's using rhetoric. That's one thing. And another thing is to say that she represents and she is a modern version of a KKK, which, as you know, was dedicated to the subjugation and violence against black people. How on earth is she a modern Grand Wizard?
There is a worldview that says that the remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. That if you're black or brown, you have to have a particular point of view. That's from Ibram Kendi. That's from Ayanna Pressley, the people I quoted in my speech yesterday.
But can you have an intellectually honest conversation
of who you are,
when you accuse her of being a Grand Wizard of the KKK? Can you have that intellectually honest discussion with that kind of rhetoric?
Yes, I can, Dana, because the point I'm highlighting is that even the people who, in good spirit, we all agree that the KKK was an awful organization that is a toxic stain in our national history. So given that we can start from that point of agreement, now that allows us to say, well, who actually sounds more like that organization today? That we need to have in this country.
The whole point is the KKK wasn't just about rhetoric.
We have to speak openly.
They lynched people, they murdered people, they raped people, they burned their homes.
And that was wrong.
Simply
that was obviously wrong.
So
wrong.
Okay,
Obvious,
so
that
again,
is obviously a wrong
if you want to
thing
have an
for them to have done.
intellectual